By way of introduction, I do know a lot of you. I've been a chief revenue officer. I had 5 operating roles. I took Ironport, to Cisco. I helped start FireEye. I took that from 0 to $1 billion in sales. And every one of my operating capacities, I've always been early, 0 revenue, which is, I don't know, I wouldn't sign up for that ever again. But it's really hard, but very rewarding when it works. And so I've also been at Bain Capital Ventures now with Enrique Salem. We own cybersecurity, investing there, and I've done another 11 portfolios that have all successfully exited. So the one thing that's pretty cool about it, so I've had 15 operating roles, and all 15 of them have exited, right? And it's the value is like way over 30 billion. And my most proud part of that is I did it all without AI. So I'm an old school guy, but that's okay. So what's interesting? I thought we should zoom out a little bit and talk about why we're even having this conversation. So customer success was always run by itself. The hope truly was a strategy in customer success. You woke up at the end of the quarter. How did we do? Pretty good. And then all of a sudden, you started to realize that the valuations of organizations are now based on net and gross retention. So if you're not paying attention to CAC to LTV ratios, and the LTV is the long-term value of a customer, which also plays a little into it, we're going to focus on net and gross retention, because now you enter a quarter before every board meeting and they want to know what that cohort was and how well you did against that. And so the idea of having, hundreds of customers or thousands of customers, and to be able to affect that with the personnel that you have is impossible. So it requires a next generation technology like AI. So I put this up because it's super funny. Like, we are now in a land and expand, right? So you now have this super impatient, very powerful customer, and software as a service, as you all know, they're like, yeah, no, I don't need to do a 3-year paid up front anymore. As a matter of fact, I don't need to buy the whole solution. I'd rather just try it out for a little while. Like, we call it the insertion strategy. So land and expand is real, especially in software as a service. And so if land and expand is that real, where's that expansion falling now, right? So my entire career, I never thought I would ever say this, customer success is now compensated. They have a variable compensation based on their performance of the expansion piece of it, right? So not only, so I like, for me at Halcyon, we just recently deployed this solution. I'm super excited to tell you a little bit about that, but like, I never thought that I would say that. So my customer success leader who reports to me, her compensation is 100% based on net and gross retention. And the benchmarks are somewhere around, people use different ones, but the gross is somewhere around 90-95%. And then the expansion piece of it, the net is somewhere around 125%. Everybody's got different ones, but that's the gold standard. They own that now. And so not only is it driving greater efficiencies, but greater customer experience. So anyways, land and expand, that's what's driven this, just so you know. Like, this is super important to understand where this is coming. The buying behavior has changed. The responsibility of growth inside your customer base has now changed to customer success. And that's why it's generally reporting into the chief revenue officer, because there's what we call net new revenue sitting there, and we need to go grab it. So I currently am at Bain Capital Ventures, but I'm also an operating partner. So I am full-time chief revenue officer at a company called Halcyon. And we brought somebody on to run customer success. And she told me, you got to see this funnel story. And I'm like, super skeptical. That's just me. But so when I really understood what it meant to the organization, and when we tested it, I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? So for such a small company, we're still a startup, and we've got over 300 customers, and we have almost zero insight. We've got 2 or 3 people managing 300 customers. So the probability of having insight into those organizations are super small. So again, I wanted to kind of break this up into how I manage it. Obviously, the front end is sales, right? And if you look at it, the lion's share now sits over in customer success. And the reason why I have it this way is that we now measure time to value. So if I close a customer, if I land a customer, for all of you sales leaders out there, we all know it's about logo velocity, and it's not about taking the whole thing down up front, because that doesn't happen very often. You have to have some form of insertion strategy and land and expand. And so I'm measuring the time to value. A customer will not expand until they've fully adopted, are operational, and happy, right? That's when they start going to phase 2 of additional licenses, phase 2 of additional products and services. So the ability to measure that time frame changes your whole trajectory of how you're forecasting that expansion revenue. If you ask a salesperson, we've all seen this, somebody closed a deal in Q1 and they're going to tell you that it's going to expand in Q2. How often does that happen? Never, because the problem is that it just took too long to expand. It took too long to get the customer fully operational and to a point where they're like, yeah, I would do this. So what if you had a solution that could accelerate that process, had pure visibility into what was deployed, is it being leveraged, and are they happy, right? So if I can pull that time to value of adoption, integration, operationalization, the time to happiness to where they'll actually expand, then I can reduce the sales cycles of my expansion, right? So I'm telling you, this is how I see it. Even though I own customer success, I'm giving you the chief revenue officer. I only care about revenue, and there's a massive amount of revenue that's sitting in customer success now. So I think it's super important that we have tools like Funnel Story to be able to take advantage of that. So we do measure our conversion rates on how we land customers, but from the expansion, and I'll get into NPS in a little bit. But so that's really important, right? So when I saw that this solution, as a part of our internal testing, could actually give me insight into were the agents actually fully deployed? Are they actually up and running? When was the last time they were accessed? What kind of communication do I have with my customer? Am I fully deployed? So one of the exercises we did was we looked at our entire customer base, and we have no idea. If I sold somebody 100 licenses, at this point, I have no idea if 100 of them have been fully deployed, even though they're paying for them. Doesn't mean they're operational. If they're not operational, then they're not going to expand. So I'm always thinking about the expansion, right? Sorry, it's all about net and gross retention. So I think from a customer success standpoint, if we just stop with and think about what gross retention means, right? I enter a quarter with 100 customers. I want to exit the quarter with 100 customers, right? And so having insight into the health of that organization based on the communication, based on tickets, filings, conversations, if you can aggregate and correlate that data and leverage that data for real insights into the health of that customer, then I have a real maniacal scientific way of ensuring that I'm going to renew at 100%. I mean, that's what I want to do. So that's really important, and obviously Funnel Story does that. The second part is more important because they're kind of coupled together. Is that when you think about net retention, how do I know when a customer is ready to expand? How do I know? What if you had 300 customers and we did this exercise? So we just launched a new product. It's called data exfiltration. So I mean, if I had that product, how would I know which customers are using it, right? Wouldn't it be nice just to be able to go, whoop, oh, these customers are using it, these aren't, we'll communicate it to them. And even like on software releases, you guys saw what just happened to CrowdStrike, right? Oops. So that's another thing. Like when you're releasing software or you're releasing news around new products and services, you want to make sure you're taking a targeted approach to that on the expansion side. So like for me, customer success is truly now a line on the P&L, which I never thought it would be. It's fun. I don't think any customer success organizations are used to being compensated, so it's super fun to create this variable compensation that's above and beyond their comp that's based on these performance mechanisms. So I thought it would be really good just to stop here. If anybody has any questions, because I'm better at Q&A than I am at presenting why. But I just think it's really important that you understand the journey of why we're here. At some point we're going to get CFOs on our team. But does anybody have any questions? Yes.
So how do you drive the change management? So you just assign a number, basically, a variable compensation to a team that didn't previously have one. How do you manage that kind of like skills and vision and mission for that team?
Yeah, so I agree. So just so you know, most customer success organizations, as we know, sales is a personality, and I'm not saying they don't have a personality. Sorry if there's any customer success people in here, but it's just that we're not born to sell. And so there is a fine line there. And so generally speaking for us, I believe, so I have a TAM organization, a technical account manager, You can have a client service manager as well that sits in between. They report into sales. Actually, I'm not wed to either one. They can report to customer success or they can report to sales, but they clearly sit in the middle, and they're the ones responsible for when a deal is closed to go through the process of implementation, integration, and operationalization. I generally like them a part of the customer success organization, so it's a cleaner handoff, and that's where they're driving next. So you want them to have a sales resource, client service rep, technical account manager that sits between sales and customer success. They actually can drive that component of it, right? Because often customer success people will see these tea leaves in AI and be like, ooh, there's an opportunity. There's like 10 licenses, or they've got 10 machines that have not deployed us yet. They're not going to pick up the phone. It's just not in their DNA. So having an organization that sits between the two of them, I think, as a phased approach is very prudent and very successful. Yes, I'll start with you.
Hi, Jeff. Good to see you. Neelu, you mentioned you're doing 100% on bookings now, the compensation.
Well, no, I do them at 95. I try to use you're always going to have some attrition. So for me, my standard is right now, this team right here is 95 and 120.
Not on gross. I'm talking about the 100% variable.
Oh, no. Well, 100% of their variable, yeah, net and gross retention. I make it clean.
Have you thought about, so the way I have done it at Google and even at Zoom for both, it's 60-40, so 60% on bookings, 40% on leading indicators. With a lot of time, really CS is not six typically, right? So it's a growth engine, but you also want to drive the consultancy, the value-driven aspect. And how do you measure that quarter over quarter? Because by the time, if you're only focusing on lagging indicator bookings, it's too late.
Yeah, but that's very subjective, and I don't like subjective things. I like ones and zeros. Sorry, but no, I think Funnel Story might be a product of where we could do that. But right now, it's just too subjective. Like I'm going to have the head of customer success tell me, "Hey, I had these conversations and they went really well." So for me, it's like that's how they were compensated before, and I just flipped it right on its head because I'm being measured on net and gross retention to the board. So are they. But I do agree there could be an element there where I'd have to double click on that. I haven't thought through it, but we've never had a tool like Funnel Story that could give us that insight. So maybe there is an opportunity there. I do like the thought there, right? Yeah, that's a good, yep.
I want to just expand on her kind of question, comment. So I spent 30 years at Oracle, and before I left, probably 6 years ago, it's about 10 years ago now, I transferred my customer success organization into revenue generating. And the biggest factor there was people that are very good at customer success and very high empathy skills are very good at building those relationships, not good at sales, right? Not good at sales. So I had a global organization that not everybody was going to transition to that. But those roles, like TAM, some became very good TAMs. Some actually thrived in this role. Of course, there was also training involved. So considering that, it's not that you flip the switch and, oh God, now my customer success managers are going to now, be revenue generating. They all panic. Most customer success people go, what? Like, now how is my customer, I'm going to trust because now I'm going to trust them.
Well, that's what it is. Yeah, you nailed it. I was just going to say it, but you said it. But that's what it is. It's this balance. Nobody ever wants to be sold to. You're supposed to have a relationship and a partnership with your customer. So it is a very delicate balance. Like, this is why I never thought it would happen, right? Because I'm like, no, you guys can't sell to them because you're supposed to have this trusted relationship and partnership. And so balancing that trust with them is super important. And that's why I like having a separate organization that they can hand it off to if there truly is an opportunity. They identify the opportunity, and then you would have another organization that's tied into it, client service rep. I use technical account manager. I like TAM because they would sit between, and it feels more like a consultative role versus like sales engineer, where they're like, uh-oh, here comes the sales engineer, going to be sold to. So I'm sorry, somebody had a question back here. Yes.
So you mentioned 100% of the variable depends on this, but I've always struggled with this, right? What is the variable amount? Because if you look at an SE organization or sales, 50-50.
Yeah, sales is 50-50. Sales engineers or solution architects are 60-40, and this is 70-30.
Wow,
Yeah.
the variable is still high.
Hey, I own the number. Don't forget about that. So I'd make it 100% if I could, but yeah, no, listen, but we also, you know what, I never thought I would do this either. I have accelerators built into their plan. How about that? So they can actually make more money with 30% variable than they could if they just were paid in their base salary. So, I mean, there's a carrot there for them, right? So, because like if our cohort, and I might have it wrong and we can move it around, we just started it at the industry standard, which is 95 and 120. And some organizations launch, new products all the time. Their net's way higher than that. So I'll figure out where that lands, but we actually have an accelerated table for them. So if they overachieve, they actually get accelerated variable. No cap. I don't believe in caps. You're talking to a sales guy here. All right, there's no caps. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain percentage, but never a cap. Not in my organization. Yes.
Are your CSMs closing the renewal, like getting a signature?
They are. Yeah, because again, so you bring up another point. I mean, these are just kind of like interesting things that not so much for funnel story, but the thing I love about that is that the bifurcation of responsibility. To me, it's always about driving productivity on the land side. If the land is expanding, they're losing productivity cycles. If the land team is renewing, they're losing productivity cycles. So if I create a bifurcation, and again, I'm not going to get into compensation plans, but if I create a plan where if I land something, let's say I land something for $10 and I know in 2 or 3 quarters, they're going to do the other 90% of it, I give them a year to expand. So even if it gets expanded by the customer success team, they're still being compensated the same, right? Well, it's not a double comp because you're paying such a small percentage of the expansion piece over into the entire organization. It's double comp, but it's very small. Yeah, a double comp. Yep. Because again, it's all about logo velocity. For those of you that are doing startups, if the sales rep is selling something, expanding something, and renewing something, we're losing cycles on the front end of landing. So a lot of it comes down to just creating a bifurcation. But you have to really, like you said, you have to trust that you have the right resources in there, and that's why it can't just be customer success. You can't wake up one day and say, "Hey, I need you guys to start selling." That's why we have these client service managers, these technical account managers that kind of sit in between, but for the most part, report into customer success.
Yes.
Are you guys looking at CSQLs as part of their compensation structure? Is that something you're considering?
That's what we're considering. It'll be more along that line and I just don't know what they are yet. So yeah, absolutely. This is fun. I'm in between you guys and lunch, which is awesome. Any other questions? Come on, give me some hard questions. Yes.
So what you're suggesting is via funnel story, your CSMs actually find the trigger to tell your TAM to take the conversation forward. So if that's the case, then are the TAMs really responsible for pricing and actually selling, or would then they transfer it to the AE to do the pricing and selling?
Yeah, so that's what the client service manager is really an AE called the client service manager. And it's one to many. I could have one in the entire customer base. So yeah, we call them client service manager again because we try to take the word sales out of everything that we do in sales because nobody wants to be sold to, especially your customer base. And so we call those client service managers, but they are salespeople. The technical account manager is the one that's responsible for implementation, integration, operationalization. They hand it off because again, I know I go back to if I have my solution architects and my SEs doing that work, then they're not doing the pre-sales work. So I can't afford to lose resources on the front end. So you have this group that sits in between and you get this force multiplier by bifurcating that responsibility. And I mean, they really should belong in customer success. Yeah. But we're using the product, I'll get to say, so we're using the product very, very specifically, right? So I have, like when I joined here, the first thing I thought of was like, hey, I wonder if there's any upside in the customer base, meaning like, if we have millions of endpoints deployed, but they're not all deployed. They've bought, know that. And then there's some that are deployed but not active. And then and understanding if that's a server versus a traditional end, like a Microsoft endpoint, that's important for me to know. The server there's a reason why it's just being quiet because it's not being called upon. But if it's Windows machine, I'm like, ooh, so that's not active. So anyway, so there's so many amazing insights that can be gleaned to create a better experience for your customer. And I didn't even bring up NPS. I mean, we all know that the NPS score is super important. We have not done that yet. We're in the midst of going down that path. And like, how are you going to do an NPS score, frankly, if you don't have a product like Funnel Story? That's just a fact. I mean, I think it's going to be critical to drive that component. You have a question? Yes.
Yes, another question. You named like a lot of different folks, right? You've got a lot of different roles, and so you've got this kind of handoff that typically happens between land and expand as well. I'm curious about kind of like the cost structure of that model. You might have some pretty high ACVs, I'm assuming, potentially have a higher touch, and how you can balance that with maybe how does like the product get involved with maybe making programs or anything like that that makes that a little bit more seamless? Like how does that information transfer flow?
For this product?
Yeah, well, just as from like a customer journey perspective, because I imagine if you've got that many people involved in like a potential high touch relationship, there's a lot of touches for the customer. Like how do you streamline?
Well, I streamline it by getting customer success involved at the end of every transaction. So there is no handoff, right? So they're actually a part of, just at the very, very end, they're part of that. That's why the TAM is there. So generally the TAM will, before we actually close the deal, you just involve a TAM. So it's not like, it's TAM from customer success. And so they own the handoff. And that's what seamlessly allows it to go over for, because again, a lot of times people sell implementation, integration, operationalization services, they own that. Like if I sell a $5,000 SKU for implementation, the TAM owns it. So they would be a part of that early stage conversation as far as the handoff.
As you made this switch, right, with CS now owning the revenue number, becoming P&L, what reactions did you see from the customer base as they figured that out?
No, they'll never know. That's my point. Like but you literally bifurcate that communication. The customer success is still talking to the customer, and when they identify an opportunity, you have an organization inside of customer success. I mean, some of them, like you said, some of them actually have the DNA to just flip right into that role without, jeopardizing the trust of the customer. So it's a balance. Yeah. But that's why I've always had customer success. Like we just hired a team in the UK, and I'm demanding that they get a technical account manager that reports into customer success because they're going to own that piece of it, right? So it's a little bit higher of a cost model, but I mean, you really are defraying some of the cost of what your normal customer success would be to the front end of these TAMs and these customer success managers. Yes.
So I was going to bring back the topic of, how do you make sure they don't feel too salesy as a customer success person. And honestly, I've kind of shut up because I totally agree with you, but I thought I'll add a little bit to what you said. I'm at 6 cents and we grew the company from $5 million.
I need to invest in your company, thank you.
So $200+ million, and we had CSMs paid for every single upsell. But the way we kind of made sure that the customer doesn't feel that they are being sold to is we also had an AE who worked along with the CSM so they'd be double comped. And in that case, it looks like we do get this AE involved where we're incentivizing the CSMs. So if you have a BDR in new logos, your CSM almost acts like a BDR. And they're completely responsible for renewals, but on the upsell portion, they work together with the AE or AM.
Yeah, and that's true. So look, what I told you is like the easiest way to think about it. But if this is an enterprise account, it's not going to a client service manager. It's going back to the AE who owns the account, right? Especially if it's a massive expansion. So there's always nuances. Usually, so what we do is the AE stays on that account, on that team until that 1 year is up, and then it's gone. It's now owned by customer success. And so I usually give 1 year to land and expand. It puts a lot of nice, healthy pressure on everyone to try to maximize the value of every account within that first year. But you're absolutely correct. The AE never comes off the account, but I want him to do as little as possible because I need him over here. I need him right here. I need him landing, not expanding. And so if you can really, I'm not kidding you, if you can bifurcate that responsibility, get the compensation, and get that trust built into the organization, it's amazing the force multiplier you get out of it.
From the change management process, how did the sales guys take it that they're leaving accounts, especially the biggest accounts? And I don't know, you guys sell one product, I don't know, but in portfolio companies, right? When the sales guys want to continue selling something else, they don't leave the account. So how did that change?
Yeah, again, so there's mid-market, when somebody's absorbed all of your, usually in the first year, they have mainly all the licenses and the products and services you sell. In the enterprise, we often keep the enterprise AE associated with the account for any large net new products or services. It's not I made it sound super clean, but there's nothing clean about it. But my point is, if you don't have this organization that can take on that responsibility to defray the productivity cycles on the front end, then, to me, it's all about productivity. It's all about productivity and customer experience. So if I can give the customer, and it's funny, the reason why I bring in the customer success at the very end is then it's not this awkward handoff, and they really appreciate it. They can't even believe it. And by the way, if customer success is involved in the proof of value stage, then guess who's going to be more responsive? Customer success or the salesperson on the weekends or whatever. So I really believe you give a better experience, you give a higher quality touch to the customer, you're going to increase your win rate, but more importantly, there is no handoff. I love that part of it. And that a technical account manager can play that role. All right, I'm going to lunch with my mom. Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed the conversation and really honored. Thank you.